Okay, 2021 NFL Draft retrospective, and this is a very interesting one for a couple of reasons. For one, it was just a very interesting draft, very talked about draft, a very controversial draft with some of these picks. Also, these are players now that they have played all 4 years of their rookie deal, meaning that they're either going to be getting a contract with their current team or of a future team, or have already had that happen in most of these cases. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see now that they're past their rookie deal. They're almost like it's almost a complete decision how that pick went. So yeah, let's just get into it. So starting off with the top five, obviously this was the iconic sort of quarterback bust draft. First at number one overall, Trevor Lawrence, who, listen, I think that he was more of a project coming into the NFL than people acted like. There were some things he had to work on. That Clemson offense really was throw a screen pass, then throw a deep pass. That being said, I will say, I think Lawrence has shown flashes of being a good quarterback. He really struggles to stay healthy. And 2 years ago, when they, again, I keep bringing this up, for like 3 hours, were the 1 seed into AFC, at week 11 or week 12, and then ultimately, the Ravens won later that night, and then it fell back down to the 2 seed, and then ultimately just fell off a cliff towards the end. The way I saw that season was they had real issues. Trevor Lawrence was kind of keeping them going, and then once Trevor Lawrence got hurt and wasn't the same, they just weren't really able to stay competitive. But he has had a really good stretch of football in his career. The thing, though, is that, one stretch of good football isn't enough. They still trust him. They paid him a ton of money, and we'll see what he does in the future. But, yeah, that's kind of where he's at right now. It's still almost a to-be-determined pick, even though it has been 4 years. Zach Wilson, in some ways, this is the second best thing that can happen to you he stunk right away. They said, okay, he's not the guy, let's move on after year 2, although he did stay for an extra year and really started most of that year because Rodgers was hurt. But yeah, that one didn't work. Trey Lance played even less. He came in, he looked okay, but didn't look great. And, they had a lot of training wheels on. And then when Brock Purdy came in, he looked better, ended up getting traded for just a 4th-round pick. But hey, not the worst thing in the world when your Mr. Irrelevant becomes a starting quarterback. So kind of worked out in a weird way. I'm sure they would have rather had Brock Purdy and the 3 first-round picks they ultimately ended up using for Trey Lance. But yeah, Kyle Pitts is next on the list, who, again, he's been an effective player. It's one of those things where you're drafted 4th overall, you're the first non-quarterback taken, people want you to be an all-pro, they want you to be a superstar, and he's just not that guy. But he's been an effective player, and yes, we're going to see in a second, there are players you would have rather had than Kyle Pitts, but he still has been an effective player for the Falcons. Finally, Jamar Chase here, who, superstar, 10 out of 10, no notes. I should mention there was the dilemma of would you rather have Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell? A lot of people have said, oh, well, you see Joe Burrow gets injured. They still haven't been able to be great. At the end of the day, I think the answer is either of them is fine as long as you can just be decent at the other position as well. The Bengals have struggled to even be competent at the tackle position. I think having Jamar Chase and having this amazing passing attack is fine. It'd be better if they could just add a couple decent tackles to make this work better. I think then they would feel really good about it. Next 5, and again, we have some stars here, so you can see why Falcons fans might be a little disappointed, even with an effective player in Kyle Pitts, because Jalen Waddle, been awesome for the Dolphins. He's really good. Penei Sewell has been one of the best tackles in football since he went with the Lions. So again, the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase thing is also so fascinating because they've both been so good. Carolina Panthers of J.C. Horn, he's been really good. The biggest knock on him is simply that Pat Surtain was Defensive Player of the Year last year and was picked one spot behind him. But Horn, even in bad situations, has looked okay, and in great situations, which he hasn't really had, but maybe in specific games, he's looked like he can be just as good as Surtain. But yeah, Surtain just won Defensive Player of the Year. That's a great pick at number 9. Broncos feel great. And then Devonta Smith at pick 10. Again, really good player. So I think, it's not too often you see a list like this and say, yeah, every team's really happy with who they got. So next 5, okay, the Bears can break the trend a little bit. That's kind of what they do sometimes. Sorry, Bears fans, but you know it as well as I do. Doesn't always work out. They traded up to draft Justin Fields at pick 11, a move I'm still going to sit here and say was a fine move to make. Fields had some issues in college, They weren't sure if it was going to work out, but, pick 11, they needed a quarterback. Let's go up and see if we can make something happen. Didn't fully work out, but yeah, I'm not going to criticize that move too much. It just didn't work out. And he's still not the worst quarterback in the world. He's still getting, decent contracts with the Jets now. Cowboys, Micah Parsons, pick 12. Yeah, that's, again, slam dunk, no notes. If you look at it, he was drafted as a linebacker, and that is not as like a, outside linebacker in a 3-4 where you're still an edge rusher. No, he was drafted as an off-ball linebacker and played off-ball linebacker and was actually pretty good at it, but kind of was doing both off-ball linebacker and edge rush, and they realized, well, you're way better at edge rush. Why are we wasting snaps having you be out there as an off-ball player? Let's put you over here. Rashawn Slater, been a great tackle for the Chargers. Again, what a draft this was, wasn't it? Elijah Vera-Tucker, I also really like as a guard with the Jets. And then we have Mac Jones. It's so funny how basically just about every non-quarterback pick has been like, at worst, like Kyle Pitts, who's still a Pro Bowl player, and at best, like these superstar players. And then the quarterbacks are just disasters. Mac Jones was a Pro Bowler. I mean, that's fair to mention. And again, kind of one of those weird, as quarterbacks, there's only so many quarterbacks. If a few say no, then you end up in the Pro Bowl. But he was good as a rookie. They made the playoffs in his rookie year. It just really fell off the rails. Hey, who knows? Maybe he'll get back on track being in San Francisco. Next chunk here. So Zaven Collins at pick 16 is interesting. They drafted him and didn't really work out. He was an off-ball linebacker who also kind of transitioned to edge. Played a bit of a hybrid role last year. Still played some off-ball and really kind of finally found some footing here his last season on his rookie deal. They did not pick up his fifth-year option, but because he found some footing, they decided to give him a 2-year, $14 million total deal. So, hey, been an effective player. Not what you want at pick 16, but not a mess. Alex Leatherwood was a mess with the Raiders. That was considered a pretty massive reach at the time and ultimately looked that way. Also didn't help that he was considered to be like a second-round pick, not a disaster, turned into a disaster. Jalen Phillips at pick 18. So he has absolutely been worth an 18th overall pick when he's been on the field. He had some injury issues, really some concussion concerns coming into the draft, and he's had some other injuries that have really kind of derailed his career a bit. I really hope he can get back to playing because when he is on the field, he is great. But as of right now, he struggled to stay on the field. Jamin Davis, who was a linebacker that the Washington football team selected, is currently no longer on the roster. They released him last year. So, yeah, not a great pick there. Kadarius Toney with the Giants. Yeah, 10 out of 10, no notes. He's been great for them, and everything's awesome there. Obviously, I'm kidding. I mean, he did have that one game where he had 190 yards against the Saints early on, and then ultimately did not do much. Is a Super Bowl champion. I guess technically a 2-time Super Bowl champion, which just goes to show how weird this stuff can be. And Larry Fitzgerald never won a Super Bowl. Kadarius Toney has 2 and was a decent role player in one of those Super Bowls I'll mention as well, especially on special teams. But yeah. Okay, next 6 here. So again, 32 picks, so got to go here. Kwity Paye, pick 21. Yeah, he's been an effective player. I mean, I think this is a solid late pick that he's been effective in. They picked up his 5th-year option, which makes sense. I think they feel good about this. They got some solid years out of him at the very least, and we'll get at least one more. Caleb Farley at pick 22 has not been that. Athleticism was great. It just never really quite worked out at the NFL level. At least hasn't yet, I should say. He still is on the Panthers. But Christian Darrisaw has been awesome for the Vikings. That's a 10 out of 10 no-notes situation. 24, the Pittsburgh Steelers get Najee Harris, who, again, I think was an effective player, played a lot for the Steelers and was effective for 4 years. They ultimately declined his 5th-year option, so now he is moving on to the Chargers, and we'll see how well that works out, but I think it's been all right. Travis Etienne, who I would not... He's weird. He's had some real flashes, right? But has not had a great offensive line to run behind and really has not fully lived up to what they were hoping they were getting when they drafted him with pick 25. They did accept his 5th-year option, and we'll see what happens. Also, horrible at blitz pickup. Gotta fix that because that's just a bit of an issue. Finally, Greg Newsome for the Browns, another guy who I think at his best has been a really good corner for the Cleveland Browns. You have seen some inconsistency, and that's really, the last year was probably his worst year in the NFL. You want to see him get back to where he's been previously, which, hey, corners can be notoriously fluky. They did also pick up his fifth-year option, so we'll see what happens. Okay, final 6 here. First, Rashad Bateman, who, if you remember, the Ravens didn't even get his fifth-year option. They just extended him a bit. He's been an effective player. Again, at pick 27 at the wide receiver position, you sometimes hope for more, I think, with something like this, but ultimately, he is someone who I think is good. I think plays a role really well and has been a really good receiver for them, so I don't think you can really be mad at that. Pick 28, the Saints selected Peyton Turner. That has not worked out. In fact, they did not even accept his fifth-year options. So he is no longer on the roster of the New Orleans Saints. Same thing with Eric Stokes with the Packers, who really did show some flashes with them. Again, another guy, great athleticism, just couldn't fully get it all together. So we'll see if he has a resurgence with the Raiders. But he was in a pretty good situation, in some of these moments for the Packers, and still couldn't figure it out. The Bills, Gregory Rousseau, been a great player. They extended him for 4 years, $20 million a year. They really like him. They should really like him. He's a great player. Yeah, can't be mad at that one. Then you have Odafe Owe, the edge rusher for the Ravens, who, if you remember, had some, if I remember correctly, he had like no sacks his last year in college, but had really good underlying numbers. So the Ravens said, hey, we'll take that guy, and he's been good for them. Had a lot of success. They really like him. They picked up his fifth-year option, and we'll see if they give him a contract after this year. Finally, pick 32, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Tampa Bay drafted an edge rusher here who just quite frankly hasn't fully worked out. Again, in a role player can make some things happen, but that's not really what you want with pick 32, and they did not accept his fifth-year option. He is now with the Cleveland Browns. So, yeah. Those are my thoughts on all of these picks. That is the 2021 first round retrospective. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.